not winning 90% of your new business because you have some sort of incredible value.
I'm going to take a bit of a different angle.
I've got a budget this big. I'm going to give it to you because you have a really killer plan.
You give a Red Bull to a turtle, what do you expect?
I think that's a dead turtle. So let's move on to...
Rick.
Cheers.
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 Does your current premium finance company lock you into long-term agreements? That's because they don't want you talking to us. At IFS, we win your business the good old-fashioned way, with customer service. I know you don't always have to use a premium finance company, but when you do, you should use IFS. Cheers.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Insurance Point podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tom Reed, and I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Steve Earle, CEO of Cheap Insurance, Adam Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell & Whale, and Jeff Roy, CEO of Excalibur Insurance.
Hey, everybody.
Quick shout out to our sponsors, IFS Premium Finance, our premier sponsor, along with the Crew Group and Garrison's Brewery, and as always, our charity partner, WIC. Thank you very much to all of you for being part of the show. We're going to take a bit of a different tack today. Sometimes we talk amongst ourselves, sometimes we get some guests in. This time we have asked for our viewers to send us some questions. And we're going to go through those questions today, right? So we are going to keep it a semi-anonymous, no last names involved here, but you might be able to guess who some of these esteemed letter writers are.
There was no two-factor authentication on these letters.
No, none.
With that disclaimer out of the way, number one, Louis G. from Montreal writes that he's not getting the results he'd like from his mobile solution for customers. All right, guys, let's see if we can help Louis G. from Montreal. If you build your mobile solution, will they come? Are customers actually interested in a pure paperless solution?
Well, I guess the question is, if you don't build it, will they leave? So maybe flip that question around, right? So we had Colin Simpson on the show, previous episode. They did the survey from the Go Paperless, and 60% of the consumers would like a paperless solution. So it's not 85 or 90% currently, it's 60%. So if a majority of your clients want that, you need to offer that as a broker.
Well, I'm going to put my consumer hat on here for a second, and I'll tell you that I was thinking about my own insurance policies, and I have 4 different underwriters. So I absolutely don't want to have 4 different apps on my phone.
But the key piece that I think Louis might have forgotten is that there is, 3 key stakeholders in this Venn diagram, and they've predicted, one element of the customer that has it, and they really left out the distribution on how was it going to happen, what mattered to them. I'm rereading this, How to Win Friends. No, not that one. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and talking about everything needs to end up in a win-win. And in this particular case, it likely needed to end up with win-win-win. And you might argue they got 2 of the wins and 1 loss.
So Adam, if Louis having trouble getting people to sign up for his app, I don't know if he's a broker or what, like, how do you get the traction? Like, if people may or may not want it, what do they need when they go there? What does Louis need to be supplying people with when they get there?
I got my analogy. So there's Walmart, and there's the manufacturer of the product, and there's the customer. And the manufacturer, will say, is tied, and they want a certain position on the shelf, and they want to streamline it to the end of the shelf to save some money, right? They don't have to pay quite as much loading fees, a little faster for the client to see it and whatnot. Consumer might like that, have it. But the problem is the new container says Walmart sucks. And Walmart says, nope, off the shelf. Get out of here. And so all of a sudden, they're not selling as much Tide as they necessarily wanted. And if they had talked with Walmart a little bit before and planned a little ahead as to what was win-win-win and what made sense, they could maybe navigate some of this.
Does the consumer want a Tide app, or do they want a Walmart app where they can also talk about maybe getting a deal on chicken breast?
You mentioned, Tom, what do people want? An app. Like right now, the consumers, it's more like a glorified get your liability slip, manage your documents, maybe check your last payment. We're waiting for that next level of connectivity, the APIs, where your claim. And right now, certain companies have the claims piped into their app. They haven't piped that experience into broker apps. When is that going to come? Hopefully soon. To make a payment change, can you do that directly in your app? I don't think any company can. I think Walmanese is working on it. They may be the first one to have an API. So as companies build these tools to plumb in to do some experiences, payments and claims, and even straight through policy changes, that's kind of where things will go. But right now, they're more a one-hit wonder that you can look at documents and produce auto ID cards, which is important, especially get it pulled over by the popo. But the other side of things, once you get your documents and your slip, it may not have important the rest of the year, right? So that's where, again, you have to be able to add some stickiness into it. The app's got to be able to communicate better, whether it's pushing messages and doing some cool stuff. But it's kind of like we have to take it to the next level. Like we're still not creating moments that matter with the apps.
Yeah, you go to check out at Amazon and you've got 5 things in your cart and you have to do a separate checkout for each frickin' item from that supplier. That's not a good experience.
All right, let's move on to our second letter. And this one, interesting enough, is anonymous. It's just entitled "From an Anonymous Business Development Executive from Winnipeg," actually. And he or she writes that he or she might have fallen for an overpriced software pitch, and they're losing ground with their bread and butter consumers. Well, honestly, that sounds like his problem or her problem. But guys, let's talk about pricing in sort of the insurtech space. There's a lot of sort of magic stuff out there. What's been your experience? You feel like you're paying for the latest MacBook Pro and getting the old Commodore 64 VIC-20 in return?
It's a big pain in the butt, and it gets worse in our space, being Canada, because it's pretty binary on winner take all. 1, 2, and 3 techs has room for the whole country, and then it kind of stops. And I think we're often upset as brokers as the biggest one has some pretty aggressive billing tactics and rate increases.
I don't know anybody in the business who's happy, who's satisfied with the tech that they're getting for the price that they're paying. What I've seen so far is Guidewire is quickly becoming the applied to insurers what applied is to brokers, in the sense of here's what we can do. And they might be doing it actually because it feels like insurers are cutting people. I mean, they're not picking up the phone, that's for sure. So I can only imagine that they're just not at home. And we're doing more. And it's not really supposed to work that way. Technology is supposed to alleviate key punches on both sides of the scenario. So Guidewire, I'm not really confident that they understand brokers, their workflows, and what we do day to day. They're a solution for insurance companies, and fuck the broker.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack here, Tom. You open up you mentioned company prices. The company's technology, broker technology, and then the insurtechs off the shelf. Let's just start with, I guess, our technology. Currently I'm paying 3% of my revenue for my BMS vendor. If you looked at all the best practices surveys back when they did them, and I haven't seen one for a while, if you were that high as an expense ratio, you were not a well-managed broker. We've seen 5, 6, 7% increases every year for 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row. I'm arguing we're not, for the increases, we have not seen the improvement in productivity. We have not seen that, and in the last couple of years, the increases in what we've got there's been a disconnect. So at some point, we have to level up and demand a bit more. There's not a ton of choices out in the market, and switching's not easy, but we need a little bit more from our systems. And, we're starting to see some of the vendors actually ask us what we're looking for. So hopefully we start seeing a huge improvement in that area.
It's a shame that, some modules get dropped or not bought, or how rocky the transition is. I'm not sure it's always fully appreciated how rocky that road of transition is for their, partners or distribution.
But Adam, brokers don't have that much choice either.
But I'm saying is on both sides. Neither do the companies and neither do brokers, right? It's an unfortunate situation.
So it's an exercise of picking the piece of shit that stinks the least.
I wouldn't even say that the smell comes into it. It's which one's going to actually be stable.
Yeah, and which one's going to be around? Like you pick the greatest flash in the pan, and they're not in business the next year. It's a big thing. You spend $300 million, $400 million on a system, and you've got really Guidewire, Duck Creek, and then you've got
who's on Duck Creek. I think
still. That's kind of your
like Gore was on Duck Creek, but that's gone.
Yeah. Well, Duck Creek's, I don't know if many people are on it, right? Like, who is the number 2 system for companies right now? I don't think anybody could tell you, right?
And monopolies in this game are dangerous to all of us because nothing fucking happens when there's a monopoly.
I think to wrap this up, I'm not sure the overpriced software system is what's costing companies or bread and butter customers. It's not necessarily software. It's maybe a choice of actuary, modeling, and predictive analytics and stuff they're putting into it to look at it. And I don't think that's necessarily a system thing directly. I don't know, maybe you guys can answer this. Does Guidewire help you build the rates? They got a rating there's their rating module tell you what you should be charging? Is that all built in and baked in there? Never heard that. That's something that the actuaries do that separately, and they use different modeling. They inject it into it, right?
Yeah, no, it's like any rating system simply says, what are the factors you want to charge? And the actuary, does his job to go figure the factors, and then they plug them into the system, which executes on those factors. But the system doesn't tell you what the factors does. The actuary or, teams of actuaries do that.
So I'm going to say that the overpriced software is not causing bread and butter customers necessarily. It's more a pricing issue.
So you're saying it's not the car, it's the driver that's at fault.
I think the driver's got a lot of control. It's not self-driving yet, so.
It's not self-driving. Good. Okay, so let's move on to our next letter here. And we have Jason S. from Toronto writes he's having a dispute with his colleague Colin S., no relation as far as we know, regarding branding. So let's see if we can help him out here, guys, and talk a bit about branding. And I'm going to get Jeff. I know, Jeff, you've been investing in the Excalibur brand, and you've got a number of sort of associated things going on both in your communities and online. So you're obviously standing behind your brand. Why are you looking to invest in your brand? Why is it even more critical to do that in 2022?
A great question, Tom. And let's first of all talk about what is a brand or what a brand is not. A brand is not a logo. It's not a tagline. It's not an ad strategy. It's not packaging. And it's not some job the marketing department does. I think we got to be clear that a brand is a story that's embedded in the mind of the market. And your brand is what people are talking about when you're not there. So it's important in today's age, in 2022, when people have the attention span of a goldfish, you have basically 1 second to grab people's attention. So you need to make sure your brand stands out, and your brand needs to be consistent the way you do it. And it's really important to wrap your brand and your value proposition around everything you do on your website, how you answer the phone, all your documents, all your images, all your videos. It all has to be consistent.
What can really hurt a brand? Like if your brand is trying to do too many things or trying to do things that might be different from each other. We've seen some companies have multiple brands, whether that's the Tide. Procter & Gamble owns many brands that all do more or less the same thing. They wash clothes, but their brands stand for different things. Maybe talk about what things can hurt your brand and when it might be the right time to have different brands.
I think that if you try to be too many things to all people with a singular brand, you're going to hurt the brand. So Loblaws has no frills, and they have President's Choice. They're speaking to two different consumers who want two different things, and they're not trying to be, they're saying you can have a yellow label and there's 4 spices in the spaghetti sauce, or you can have this President's Choice product and there's 19. Depending upon what you want and what you're doing tonight and who you're cooking for, you might pick one or the other. So if you just had President's Choice level 1 or level 2 or option, like, you can create entire brand confusion around trying to address, trying to be all things to all people. So the tack that we took in our organization is we do have 2 brands, but the brands stand for different things, and the experience is different. One is more direct-like. There's a lot more self-serve. It's all digital. You'll never get a piece of paper, that sort of thing. Whereas the other is more traditional. But we wanted to brand them differently because the experience is different.
Sort of in that same sphere, let's talk about marketing. As it happens, we have a letter here from Rowan S. from Kitchener. He's got a question for us. Says, guys, we just went public. We need to meet the street's expectations for growth. Now, my take is you grow when your sales and marketing functions are well aligned. And maybe Adam, you can help them out. You've been doing some investing in marketing and growing your sales team.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Charlie Munger quote on this, and Charlie's the business partner and a lot of brains behind Buffett, and he has a quote, something to the effect of, you show me the incentive or the comp, and I'll show you the result. So I use that springboard to say, you need to have some incentive to get the attention for the sale, right? Anytime you want to grow distribution or sales or leads, you got to invest in it. And that could be whether you're investing in M&A or whether you're investing in organic sales, but nobody has found a miser's dream to make this thing actually free. That said, you can't get blood from a stone either, right? Like, nobody's going to sell 6th place. So you kind of have to have 2 elements going. You need to have a little competitiveness in the product and pricing and offering, and then you need to have an incentivized sales force to go figure out how to distribute this thing.
I think the big thing you have to look at in terms of getting marketing and sales aligned, they call it smarketing. So it's when you have the marketing people actually talk to the salespeople, and the marketing people understand from sales, what is a minimum qualified lead? And this is more an account-based marketing, so stuff you run into in the B2B world, they do it a lot better than the business-to-consumer world, where they have a minimum qualified lead, and they're looking for the marketing people to generate better quality of leads. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. You know, if I bring you in 300 leads and 298 are crap, I'm not doing a very good job. So in the brokerage world, we have to make sure we're turning, quantity and quality of leads. And likewise, the companies need to say, here's where we're good, here's where we're profitable, here's where our rates are competitive, here's where we're profitable, and actually communicate that to your brokers, as opposed to saying, yeah, go ahead and do it, see you later, do whatever you do. I think there's a level that if you do a good job in your pricing and then you guide your brokers the right way, you become true partners. You're not stakeholders. And if a company has just demutualized or went private or whatever, or a company's a regular stock company and wants to do well, those are things they need to do. It's marketing.
I think that there's a spread that you got to watch for a company that's just gone public, or whether they're a mutual company or whatever. And the spread is, number one, my pricing has to be something that my distribution network can sell. So I can't, if they have a dozen options, I can't consistently be number 10, and I can incentivize them any way they want, but I likely won't get any traction or organic new growth. The other spread that they got to look at too is, I can be a little bit higher, but if I'm easier to deal with for my distribution network, I'm going to start winning a bit more. So I could be, we'll call it 10%, $10, $100, whatever. My distribution channel, if I take half as long to deal with, or if I'm easier to get along with, or if I have a better relationship, or whatever it is, the frontline people perceive me as being taking 2 minutes instead of 20, I'll win business. So I need to invest in my infrastructure, on saving my distribution, time, energy, and creating value for that organization.
So we've got Warren B. from Omaha, and he writes to us saying, "Hey guys, I'm thinking of expanding my operations to the Great White North, but I need to know that you guys have a strong sales culture." So how do we respond to Warren B. from Omaha asking about our sales culture? And he's talking specifically about the broker channel.
Yeah, I'll pipe in with a couple things just quickly. Like, it's about creating moments that matter. If you can create 6 or 7 different actual moments that matter and be about 10% better, that compounds itself and can do very well. What are moments that matter? People talk about touch points. How often should you communicate with the client? Well, depends what the client wants, but we try and hit them with 12 communications once a month, a birthday touch point, and a protection review. So we're looking at 14 touches a year. Now, some people don't want that. We can modify it so we can have very low touch if that's not what they want. So, you have to kind of adapt the experience to the customer. We have different onboarding journeys for new clients. We have, we've created different experience for different products. So
I think it's amazing how much the U.S. overlaps and the massive spending budget that they have to get inadvertent brand recognition up here. Like, we've heard a number of times the most recognized brand in Canada is an American brand, and what could they do if they just opened up that jurisdiction? The size of the pie up here might not be worth it. I mean, all of Canada is less than California by insurance spend. So do you really want 6, 10 more jurisdictions and regulators to navigate for a prize that small? Thankfully, hopefully not.
What happened to State Farm, one of the bigger insurers in the U.S.? How well did they end up in Canada?
Well, they go the other way. Travelers has not had an easy run either, right? I mean, they have relatively unlimited money and power and analytics and all kinds of things, and they haven't found it a cakewalk.
Charles B. from Toronto writes to us, he's not collecting enough user data. Do we have any ideas on how we can collect more data? And so I'm not sure we want to get into telling Charles B. from Toronto how to collect more data, but let's talk about the use of data and how you guys use data. Would you say that you use data to drive, what percentage of your decisions do you feel are driven by data?
Not enough.
Not enough is one answer, Jeff.
Well, I always say, when God we trust, everybody else bring data. I luckily haven't met God yet officially, so they better come packed with data. So every decision should have some element of data in it.
We turn it around. Give it maybe talk about some times that you've made decisions that weren't based on data or went against what the data told you because you went on instinct or your gut or whatever. Turn it around. When did you not use the data and why?
That's a good one. I don't know. I might have to come back to that. My sort of preloaded answer in thinking to you guys on the mailer question was, you got to think a bit more on this win-win side of, the easiest way to get something is to start with giving something ahead of time and build up a bit of that social trust. So, I would say collaborate, right? Like, how are we going to get something there? Is a little collaboration will keep all the cogs in the engine running. The other one that concerns me with the data file is I think leading in Europe first, and it's leading with Europe on social media, but this idea of data collection being universal and going one-way filter up to the top seems like it might be coming to an end. And I haven't seen how it might impact insurance companies or others, but it's certainly going to very quickly affect the marketing side. And the simple change from iOS, from Apple turning off Facebook, is having significant changes to Facebook's valuation. What used to be one of the most powerful companies in the world, I think we're a couple regulation changes away from some things like that, and where we should be allowed to send data, where we should be allowed to buy data, where you should be allowed to sell data. I think it's going to be a hot topic issue.
Who owns the data? Who owns the data? I don't know if Charles B. from Toronto is on the underwriting side or the distribution side, but I can tell you, if Charles B. wants my data about my customers, he could probably buy it, manipulate it, do what he wants with it easier if he purchased it from Applied than I can do it as a customer of Applied.
That does not sound like a good thing from your perspective.
No, not really. I mean, they're customers of my organization, and I would like to extract data in certain ways and whatnot. But I know too that he could probably approach my software provider and purchase from them my aggregated data, or Adam's, or well, not Adam's, but Jeff's for sure, and get more intelligence out of it than is afforded to me as the actual inputter of the data.
So you're manufacturing the data, but you are not able to, for a variety of reasons, to actually make best usage of it.
Great points from the guys. You know, the Facebook's valuation dropping 25% in a couple of days because of the reduced ad revenue and all these challenges. You know, brokers are going to have a tricky time when anybody's on Apple opening their email. You know, what's my open rate? You know, you're gonna have to look at more at click-through rate. So even our metrics are changing, and it's getting tougher to get a line or a view on the client to see how effective that feedback loop, how effective your branding marketing is, and that's going to make it tricky. So there's going to be a bit of guess. Unfortunately, you know, we're going to lose some of the data and some of the line of sight, so we might have to use our gut a bit more. So
I'm going to plug Cody for a second, because we had a very forward, bold stance on data. And we said, Steve, if you use this, it is your data. You own it. You have forever access to it. Here it is. And you can now benchmark against yourself. We have access to some other data. If you would like to benchmark against that, we're able to provide value. We can give you that insight, right? And so as we connect all that, but here is a way to help you structure your data, and you could analyze it, and you can choose if you want to compare it, right? Like it's a transparent view on this whole thing.
That's really interesting, because we talk about data a lot, and my view is that people actually don't want the data. People like Steve and like you guys, you actually don't want the data per se. What you want is the intelligence that you can glean from adding, subtracting, dividing, displaying that data, right? So you're not looking at individual bits and bytes of data. You're looking at what are the pieces of, what are the aha moments in the piece of intelligence. So, you know, buying Adam, you giving Steve access to his data, he could either do that himself, or he could pay Cody to do that for him, and, you know, essentially, and also enhance it with whatever else is there. So that's so there's value there that somebody might be interested in paying for.
Here's the part that I want the level playing field and something that doesn't feel like a slippery slope. Because imagine, Tom, me and you are business partners, and we have 100 clients. And I come into the office one day and said, hey, great news, Tom. I just got our 100 clients a fun widget. We're going to send it all to them. You say, hey, cool, that's great. Aren't we going to get a lot of insights from that? I'm like, no, I will. And you say, oh, that's cool though. It'll have Tom and Adam on it for Excellent Widget Academy. I said, no, I just said Adam on this one, buddy. And he said, okay, I guess we're partners. And I was like, yeah, for a while, until they only recognize me. Right? It's like, it is a silly parable, but it's like, hold on a second. Is this a partnership or a parasite? Like, which way are we going on this? Like, there's another way, a whole nother reality where we could remount this, and it can be Tom and Adam's widget, and Tom could get equal insights that Adam gets insights, and we have some ways to navigate this. But it's just that's the frustrating part for me of lopsided.
Because I just realized that I have no interest in being a partner with you now, widget fucker.
Don't be a widget fucker. That could be the title of this episode.
Okay, we have one last letter, and this one's postmarked from Seattle. Jeff B. says, guys, I started my career as a humble seller of books, and just got back from space, actually, but my wife has divorced me. and now she's giving away all my money. Can I be on your show? Well, I don't think we want Jeff B on our show, to be honest, but let's talk about attracting leadership talent into the broker space.
We've onboarded over 40 people during COVID, and I think there's both statements. It's the great resignation as well as the great reshuffle. The caliber of talent we've picked up in the last 2 years is a remarkable sort of climb and elevation. And I think there is our business is maturing, the offering is maturing, it's getting better, but equally, the size of our talent pool just expanded by, I don't know, some infinite percent. I don't think I'm smart enough to figure it out, but where we used to be able to pull from a small 1 hour geography circle around our office, now we have people in Alberta, we have people in Halifax, we have people all throughout, Southern Ontario. We have a waiting list on 3 out of 5 of our positions, right? Like it's just a silly game changer. And I would say, if I were going to attribute it to a thing, full and complete adoption to remote work. So when a talented person that lives far away from us wants to work from home, does not want to go back to the office, and we offer that on the table, that doesn't seem to be a very consistent offering across the board. You hear about it on part days, remote, hybrid, some, or we'll do it for a bit. But I don't know. Like, is there other things behind the scenes going on that I'm not taking full account for? Yeah, it could be.
All right, so Adam, like in theory, any organization that's sort of a white collar kind of position could go remote, just like you have, and yet you have sort of stood out from that perspective. Does that suggest that there are very few other brokers who are taking that sort of all remote, where desired approach?
Oh, Tom, Cheap was 100% remote 5 years ago.
And in the rarity, though, I think that's the point. It's
rarity,
still rare.
But I will tell you that because I run the two models, Cheap has struggled less with acquiring talent than my traditional shop has, because we had no bounds with respect to, like all of our employees are still in Atlantic Canada, but I have them all over the province. So it wasn't a matter of, even 5 or 6 years ago, everybody was a remote worker. That it was a digital brokerage, which meant it was a virtual brokerage. We never had a storefront or an office space. Everybody worked from home from day one. So it was faster getting people because we could hire in Sydney, Nova Scotia, or Digby, Nova Scotia, or Moncton, or wherever. Now, we haven't hired outside of Atlantic provinces yet, but we're going to go there because that's who we're competing against now. And it's very quickly becoming that way for our traditional shop too. We've had a number of people who said, well, I'm going to move home to New Brunswick from Halifax. Well, wait a minute. You don't need to resign. You can keep working there. So I think it takes a while to educate yourself as a brokerage, particularly a traditional brokerage. COVID has helped us with that. And can we do it sustainably for a long time? We struggle with training, onboarding new people when leaders live 1,000 kilometers away from the team that they, it's good to have face-to-face interactions, but we're getting through it. But the challenge is when you're rural, historically, rural compensation has been lower. So Atlantic Canada compared to being downtown Toronto, or even Whitby, where Adam is, compared to downtown Toronto or others. Now we're competing with everybody, nationally.
We had a big aggregator open up a brokerage in southwestern Ontario in Welland, and that was a very classic call center in a more rural area that had a lower income than the mothership in Toronto. and that was their expansion of the talent pool out there. When COVID hit, that business plan flips upside down, because all of a sudden those people that are used to working a call center in front of a screen and a computer, phone, can have that screen and phone wherever they want and receive a paycheck from anybody that, to Steve's point, has a P&L that's used to paying. So COVID has forced a lot of pivots on that, like, little parable of who moved my cheese. You're starting to find out which mice adapted.
Yeah. So I've heard one real strong takeaway here which is the, being open to, like, wide open to and capable of letting people work in the style to which they're accustomed or to which they desire to work. Is there any other major takeaways that you guys are using to attract and or retain talent?
I'll go politician on you and ask the question I want to answer is what because we're winning really well and this current fishing lure is hitting and we got people lining up and we're doing well. What am I concerned about? I'm concerned about mentoring people, concerned about being able to grow and have those collisions where you just overhear something. And now that everybody's remote, you don't overhear that thing that makes you think or trigger to talk about it. Who gets FaceTime? Who gets promoted? It's culture and friendships.
The camaraderie that is created in the lunchroom is gone, right? Those things were really, they add value to, there's people who still really want that. They want to leave their home and go have friendships at work outside of the four walls that they've been in. Like, some people crave that, but it's really hard to create engagement between teams, between leaders.
No, and I think it's important that if you have remote people, that's great, but you want to try and get people together. Physically, get them into the office. Now, whether that's once a month, a couple times, a year, it depends on the individual. It depends on how far away they are. Like, we've got a staff member in PEI, and it works very well. But at some point, are they going to be back for a week? Can they do some training, reconnect with everybody? Like, that's important. Like, as much as remote is great, there's still that component of interacting, the whole osmosis thing where you pick stuff up by being there, overhearing conversations. There's a huge value to that where you just lose that digitally. And yes, there's software programs that simulate the coffee room where people can go hang out with, but during COVID, maybe that was a necessity, but it's just not the same. It's hard to replicate that.
Let's be honest, in any medium like we're doing right here, because we're all remote with each other, I know we're paying 100% attention, but anytime you're on one of these things, you are not engaged to the level that you would be if you were sitting across from somebody at a table.
No, and we look at us. We try to get together. We have not seen each other. It's been over 2 years, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody who's listening or watching can admit that, like, if you had to be involved in a strat plan or a serious meeting of some kind, that your level of engagement on a digital platform versus sitting around a room with a whiteboard or a whatever, it's lower. It just
is that's a good hypothesis, but there's so many variables to this because I just hired a lot of talent I could never have hired, a lot of intelligence I never could have got a hold of, and when we voluntarily opened the office, very few came back. So that tells me that a good 90% of our population is quite enjoying something they're getting from their home balance. Is that going to sustain? I don't know.
Yeah, there's no one answer, and there's no, and it's a moving target, right? It's a teeter-totter that keeps moving back and forth. And the main thing is being flexible and adapting. And I think all of us have been flexible. We've adapted. We continually have to adapt because it's not the strongest that survive, but the one best able to change, to quote Charles Darwin, right?
I mean, the one thing that's clear is if your model is based on bums in chairs physically and you think it's going to go back to that, you're fucked.
Is retention important to your brokerage? Of course it is. That's why at IFS, we have a cancellation prevention process. Want more details? Give us a call. I know you don't always use a premium finance company, but when you do, you should use IFS. Cheers.